I teach the first grade, and every year it seems I get a more challenging student than the year before, as if the universe sees I'm ready for it.
First grade's a really good grade because most of them are still in the receptive mode.
Yeah. Even when they're not, they're able to get back to it.
Yeah, but there's always one who isn't, and this year he's really not.
Yeah, it's each year it seems like life gives me a bigger challenge, but I'm more ready to
But what's interesting to us, and we really want to call your attention to this, so receptive mode is where it's at, yes, and the younger they are, the more likely they are to still be there. So they're really teaching you more than you're teaching them, as it turns out. But isn't it interesting that we're talking about the one who isn't? And it's sort of the way we love you so much humans roll. You want to go to the problem and focus on it, then that takes you out of the receptive mode. So is there a way of ignoring the one who's not in the receptive mode?
Well, he does command the most of my attention. Like he interrupts the lesson and things like that.
But we've been interrupting you deliberately as much as we can, because when one is full of oneself, it's just the way it is. In other words, what are the interruptions like? What kind of interruptions? This kid may very well be so in the receptive mode that he just can't hold back from delivering important information in a timely manner.
Could you come to my class on Tuesday? I'd love to have you there. That would be great. So, like, what would you do right now, Abraham? I mean, that's what I always want to think.
Listen and love.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really think that it is just an obnoxious, selfish personality that you're witnessing, or is it someone frisky and uncontrollable? Oh, don't control him.
No.
Encourage his receptive mode. You can guide it, but don't shut it down. We say that to all of you relative to your little ones. It's one thing when they're out of the vortex and they're really ornery. Don't give them your undivided attention. But when you can tell that they're tuned in and that they're flowing from that broader perspective, revere them and honor them in the way that you are listening to our words right now, because it's the same sort of thing that's happening. Yeah?
Yeah.
Easier to see now, we know. So what else?
Could talk all day. They might not like it, but okay, this one boy I'm thinking about, someone assessed him and felt he's got a label.
Yeah,
and I don't like labels. Yeah. So I find when you bring peace to the child, they don't act out these behaviors that merit a label.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm working on, is not resisting label, not fighting other people, just letting them say what they say and doing what I do and getting the results I get.
Because if you resist them about the label that they've assigned, they'll defend it by looking for the evidence of it. But if you just accept it like a step 5 thing, it's contrast and you just accept it and don't push against it, then you at least don't add any power to the label. And one who's connected is 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, 100 million times. We can't even find the right percentage more effective than one who is not. In other words, when you tune into source, everyone could be saying it. And if you're in alignment and you are holding him as your object of attention, he's gaining much more influence from you than from the others.
And that's the trick for me, to stay in alignment when I've got 30 of them and one's interrupting, and trying to balance keeping my job and staying in the alignment and letting that child be the way he is. It's that striking that continual balance.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's fun to let the ideas flow. It's fun to stay in sync anyway. It's fun to tap into that broader perspective. It's fun to get insight from his inner being about him. It's fun to feed him what he wants or needs in the moment and watch the positive results of it. It's fun to watch the other students letting him be. It's fun to watch those less controlling and less rigid in what's right and what's wrong responding, isn't it? Isn't an opportunity like that more fun than if you had 30 children all behaving just the way they've been instructed and controlled to behave? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They don't
Yes,
do
sir.
that a lot.
They don't?
Well, some do. I mean, I want to stay in that sweet spot that you're talking about. I want to get the goal where the child can read and write and do all those things. But I want to be enjoying the journey, like you're saying, more.
Well, when they want to read, they will read. Adults are so often wanting to dictate their desires to the young ones. And these little kids are saying, wait a minute, I seem to feel like I'm in charge of me, and I really don't want to do this. And then adults say, well, then we'll make the consequences so unpleasant that you'll choose this over that. Well, that's not inspiration. That's motivation. That's not going to serve them. That's the beginning stages of guiding them away from their own internal guidance, you see. So what you want to do is be so thrilled about the experience of reading that if someone's in the vicinity, you ignite within them a similar interest. Have you read anything lately that really thrilled you, that made you want to stay up at night and read it more? Have you got a book going where in the morning when you wake up that you want to read it because it's what's going to get you into the receptive mode? You got anything going on like that?
Not recently, no. When are you going to finish that book?
But what you're saying to them is, I know it all stinks, none of it's interesting, but read this anyway. It'll be good for you. What you want to do is be on fire about reading. You want to say to them when they say, why are you so happy? Say, because life is so good to me and I'm reading this most interesting thing. Well, what's it about? Well, it's about when I go to bed at night, I want to read it. When I get up in the morning, I want to read it. Reading is so fun because when I read, I can use my imagination. When I read, I can feel exactly how I choose to feel. Reading is so good for me. Reading is so personal and so private. It's like the whole world just goes away and it's just me and what I'm reading. If you want them to want to do something, then you've got to want to do it. Otherwise, you're the wrong teacher for that subject. Read this. Have you read it? No, I didn't like it.
I've been doing those processes in the morning and I'm feeling good. But I want that feeling. I've wanted that for a while to jump out of bed because I'm excited about a new thing.
What books are they reading? In other words, you want them to read. What is it you want them to read?
Whatever they're interested in. I mean, whatever they're
So they
excited
get
about.
to choose.
Yeah, they choose. We have a library.
And how old are they?
6.
They're 6, so they get to choose. Are you out there choosing anything?
For them?
For yourself. Is there anything in their library that you want to read?
Oh, wow. I mean, they're very basic books, but I could...
We know they are. They stink.
But
Have you seen what else they have access to? They have access to all of those games. They have access to all of this technology. They have access to all of this motion. They were born into an environment where they are ready for so much more, and that stuff is not exciting them very much. So if we were standing in your physical shoes, we'd be looking for something exciting out there in that library and we'd shine a spotlight on it. Have you ever gone into a department store or a store of any kind and there's no one in there? And you get in there and you see that's beautiful and that's beautiful, and your juices start flowing. You start sort of panting at the beautiful stuff that's in there. And before you know it, there are all kinds of people in that store with you because your enthusiasm for what's in there is activated, set at a beacon, and other people can feel it. Other people that are looking for good stuff can find it because you already found it. It's just like that. If you want to inspire delight about reading, you've got to be delighted about reading. Think about how you feel. You're not feeling very delighted about reading. You're feeling controlling about reading, or you're feeling like they're not wanting to read. In other words, which end of the stick are you on? The happily ever after reading or the they're not reading end of the stick?
I love reading.
Yeah.
And I do share that with them.
Yeah.
But I could like that library more.
Yeah.
I could search through it and say, which would be the most exciting thing to read today? That also fits the topic.
But the thing is, here's really what we're wanting to impart to you. These kids are different than any kids before them. In other words, they're coming so much more attuned to their own guidance system. And they want to be in the receptive mode, and they want their guidance to come from their inner being. You see, most adults have stopped doing that a long time ago because other adults when they were children were pushing things on them. And so most have not been encouraged to be in the receptive mode. So you don't want to pick the books for them. You want to demonstrate being in the receptive mode while you're in the library. You want to demonstrate your appreciation for this beautiful school and for this beautiful library and for the fact that all of these books exist and all of the fun and fancy and stories and interesting things that are in these books. You want to feel about this library like it's like a treasure hunt where there is so much interesting, satisfying experiences for them, not just reading for the sake of getting words to come out of their mouth, but reading because there's interest, there's a story, there's a writer. There was a creative writer who gave their attention and actually created something that is magnificent for them. In other words, there's a co-creation underway here. And so what you are wanting is to activate within yourself your appreciation of that. And when it's active within you, they will find it too. And then you'll start getting some feeling going. We know it feels like these kids are way too little to be excited about this, but they are not. They want to be in the receptive mode. And what we mean by that is they want to choose their book. We've heard you say, I was walking through the bookstore, I was walking through a library, and your book, they will say to Esther and Jerry, your book just sort of leaped into my hands, or a spotlight shined on it, and I was just drawn to it. Well, that's being in the receptive mode. And we're not just talking about our books, we're talking about path of least resistance. Your inner being and their inner beings know who they are and know what they're looking for and know where they stand in relationship to it. And there are all kinds of stories in all of those books that are just the right thing that they're wanting to integrate into their understanding right here, right now. And their inner being knows that. So you want their book search to be an inspired book search, you see. So you've got to expect that and be happy about that by you shining the light on this magnificent bookstore, this library, by acknowledging what's there and what's there for them. Treasures in all of those pages, just the right thing at the right time for each of them. Don't you recall books that you read when you were younger and the influence that they had on you? Don't you remember the interest that you felt? And don't you remember feeling proud about something or feeling excited about something? Don't you remember the emotional responses that you were receiving from books? This is really a wonderful thing, you see. And it's not only wonderful because of all of the adventure that's there for them, but it's wonderful because it's that delicious sweet spot for you of watching yourself be different from almost every other adult, where you're not cramming things down their throats. You are encouraging them to the receptive mode so that they are inspired to it. And we promise you, when somebody is walking, one of those little guys is walking through this library and they feel an impulse for a book, when they get it in their hands, they're going to feel desire for it. In other words, this is the way their inner beings are working. They're going to feel interest, and you're going to stand back and watch. You're going to see them flipping through the pages and wondering. You're going to feel the goosebumps on your body. You're going to recognize that what you are witnessing is a receptive mode in motion, you see. Yeah. Far different than what's happening in most classrooms, where they are assigned to do it and do it whether they like to do it or not. And we say, anti-receptive mode conversation. What do you teach? I teach children away from their guidance system. I teach them not to pay any attention. I teach them not to get in the receptive mode. I teach them to just do what they're told. I teach them, then I give them tickets to Abraham in 20 years. Really good.
Really good.
You're doing extremely well. And this conversation sounds much bigger than it needs to be for you, because there isn't anything that we've given here that you don't completely understand. But you said it best when you said, however, Abraham, sometimes I'm in that classroom with 30 kids that I'm supposed to control. And it was telling when you said, and I've got to keep my job. In other words, I have to sort of march to the beat of the drummer that somebody has already established. And we say, march to the beat of the drummer that is coming to you from inspiration. And it is our promise to you. You will live happily ever after. And things will always work out for you if you are inspired to everything that you do with these kids. And oh, they are so ripe and ready for your inspired leadership, you see. That's what they want. And that little rascal who seems the most problematic, he is the most significant one in that classroom for you. Good enough?
Thank you.